So a little bit about my background in virtual production. I started a long time, about 15 years ago, in motion capture, before virtual production was even a thing. I've got to work with some really, really great people over the time. This was by far the highlight of my career, working with Danny DeVito. The man is absolutely amazing. This was for a film called The One and Only Ivan, which was a straight to Disney Plus film about a gorilla in captivity. And all of the animals in captivity. If you haven't seen this film, by the way, and you've got kids, watch it with your kids, because it's really, really amazing. It's a really good film. All these animals in captivity talk to each other while the humans aren't there and stuff, and they're planning their escape. So we needed to make a film of animated animals with photorealism to them, that then could be laid in front of the live action plates as well, and it blended completely on there. So Danny DeVito was the executive producer of the film, but he also played one of the characters. He was a dog, so we had to turn Danny DeVito into a dog, which was an unusual task, but really, really good. He was in his 80s by the time that this was made. He turned up at 7 o'clock every morning and was there till 7 o'clock every evening. And like, just the work ethic of the guy is really, really amazing. He is as funny as you expect him to be as well. So in my time, like I say, I did 15 years motion capture. I've worked with people like Disney, Lucasfilm, Industrial Light and Magic, Warner Brothers and Marvel on all sorts of different productions for them. Then after COVID, I quit working on stages because I was exhausted, and decided to come and work for Digital Garage doing systems integration, because virtual production was being taken up by people like you guys and the skills were required out there. So what is virtual production? So this is a question that everyone will give you different answers to at the moment, because it's not really been finalised at the moment. Virtual production is kind of this catch-all term that gets used in lots and lots of different ways and stuff. But from my point of view, it's anything that uses a real-time render engine in your pursuit of making some sort of content on there. At the moment, we call it virtual production, but that won't be forever. At some point, we will drop that virtual word off of this, and it will just become production, because everything you do at some point will have a virtual element to it. So at that point, what's the need for the word virtual in there? All production will be virtual at some point, and we will just call it production. So, what most of you think of as virtual production is IC VFX, which is the LED walls. Okay, that's the big LED walls. You point the camera at it, the game engine corrects the perspective for it. You track the camera so that that perspective can be changed in real time to give you the right in-camera VFX. But there is also hybrid green screen virtual production, which is exactly the same process. You're just not having the LED wall behind it. You've got a green screen behind it, and you use a Blackmagic Ultima to do a real-time key on there, and you feed that back out in there. So, you know, an LED wall is a very, very expensive way to enter this. Hybrid green screen is a much cheaper way of doing it, so that will become relevant in your sort of chosen pathway into taking up virtual production. Performance capture and pre-visualization. These are two areas that most people forget about in virtual production, but actually this is where it all came from. These two wouldn't have been possible without all of the work that was done in these areas beforehand. So performance capture is a combination of motion capture and facial capture together, probably with some audio as well, where you capture an entire performance of somebody, which can then be added to an avatar in post-production. After a while of doing that, and as computers became more powerful, we started to do that as real time, so people could see the results of it as we were doing it, and you would then use that as a pre-visualization for, yes? We will come on to that. Yeah. We will get it. I've got slides about that very one, so just bear with. So yeah, performance capture, that is where you capture the full body motion. Facial capture, there's lots and lots of different ways, lots and lots of different technologies that you can use to do that. Some of them are very low end, some of them are very high end. The cost that you sort of pay for it will say will be how good the final results are on it. The more you spend, the better it's going to be. And pre-visualization just uses some of those performance capture technologies to allow you to block out your scenes before you go to shooting something. So it's a way of storyboarding something, but in a virtual production sort of manner. So, in-camera VFX, the most famous example of that is obviously The Mandalorian. Everybody knows this because it's kind of where it all kicked off from. Now, it's a bit of a lie that The Mandalorian started virtual production, because broadcast had been doing it for a while beforehand. It just wasn't very exciting, so nobody really cared about it. Weather teams and news teams were using it, and things like elections, you know, when you see the people at elections and they're stood there with graphs coming up next to them and stuff like that, it's all the same thing, it's all virtual production. It's just nobody really cared about it until Industrial Light and Magic did it, and then it became very exciting. There is a little video of this, and I've got a few little videos for you to watch, just in case anybody doesn't know any of these things. Most people should, but this is just a little intro, and this was kind of the first public sort of viewing of what virtual production was. So, is this going to play? Yes.
Part of what's been fun about collaborating on The Mandalorian with Lucasfilm and Disney is that we have been able to see through a few technical innovations and a few firsts that I think are going to have a lot of impact on the way television and movies are made moving forward. In partnership with ILM and Epic, we have put together a system whereby which we can have game engine, real-time render, and video wall technology coming together to create a backdrop for the big, beautiful world of Star Wars.
The volume is 21 feet tall, it's 75 feet in diameter, run by 7 machines, pumping the visuals onto the screen that's been created in pre-production, and can be on the screen within 24 hours of being finaled.
It's incredibly impressive when you first walk out there, because it completely surrounds your peripheral vision. And you really quickly forget that you're indoors and you're not out on some planet's surface. It feels like a real three-dimensional environment surrounding you, because it is a three-dimensional environment.
You can allow your key creatives to all make decisions together so that the shots are captured entirely in camera, which allows for a better performance.
And what was so exciting about this is by bringing those people together, things started to click, and we started to realize, well, let's not just do green screen interactive light. If we're going to design the whole set and game engine ahead of time, maybe we could have some in-camera effects.
Everything in the volume is designed to both light the actors and to be a background that we can directly photograph. So you end up with real-time final pixels in camera.
If you look at visual effects, heavy films, you've got a film set, and then it's going to go to post and it's going to get the world put in. Here we're considering all of that at the same time, and how do we create a background and foreground that live together on the volume harmoniously.
When we started to play with the idea of using Unreal Engine for virtual production, that's one of the things that Richard and John started to embrace, is that you've got this very dynamic world where you can have randomization of things and find the happy accident that gives you the perfect shot. Being able to see the actors point at things and see what they're looking at was pretty transformative. It gave everybody context, with the added benefit that if you want to move a mountain from there to there, you can do it instantly.
You could switch between the Iceland location to the desert location, all within the same day of shooting.
The ability to shoot a 10-hour dawn is extraordinary. To shoot any sequence where you say, oh, this world's not quite right, let's just move it a little bit. An extraordinary number of benefits and advantages for shooting in that environment. It's mind-blowing what that tool is.
What you see is really what you get. And that's something that really means a lot to filmmakers, especially those who have worked with a more traditional approach in the past.
Shots of character in a vehicle traveling through a complex environment is always very difficult to do believably on stage. LED screens are a wonderful solution to that problem, because what you're doing is you're taking this technique of image-based lighting that we've been using in computer graphics for years, and use it to light a subject.
And then we would do shoots where we would texture map real lit surfaces onto our game engine Geo, and so the camera could move anywhere. We would do interiors, like Werner Herzog's office, and then you started doing things like building sets into it, having half a spaceship with reflective surfaces, and so it became exciting because by the end of the season, it was like, let's start designing sets around what this could do well.
Just like the good old days.
With Star Wars, we're building on a rich legacy of innovation, and getting to partner with Jon Favreau to make his ambitious vision a reality, it's really a game changer for filmmaking.
Okay, so that was really what got the industry really excited about virtual production, but that wasn't where it started. In motion capture, for a long time before that, people have been asking us to track the cameras in the motion capture that we were doing, so that they could use those later to animate where the cameras were going to be in their animations. And that's what I've been doing for years and years, and when Industrial Light and Magic built the stage at stage 4, that was when I got the call from them to say, we need somebody to come and track cameras at stage 4 over here. And there weren't very many people with Vicon experience tracking cameras at the time. There's a lot more of them now, but it was a very lucky situation for me to be in. And just to go back to this video, it would have been impossible to film The Mandalorian on a green screen. Does anybody know why?
Reflections?
Reflections, exactly. Mandalorian's helmet is shiny. Okay, if you'd have tried to film that on a green screen, the amount of post-production work that it would have taken to remove the green from his helmet in that just made it not worth filming at all. So it wasn't until this technology was available and usable like this that actually it was a viable project for them to do. Also, there's in-camera VFX in broadcast. This is a lot less exciting, this video, unfortunately, but that's just the way broadcast is, unfortunately. But this will give you a little bit of an idea of some of the things. Stipe is a company that we work with, and they make some of the tools that kind of make it a little bit easier to do this sort of broadcast stuff. But this is all about virtual sets, about having in-place graphics. So you can see he's spinning this thing here, and it creates an in-place graphic for him over here. It's a lot sort of cheaper, more cheerful, but it serves a purpose, and it's an important part of virtual production. So we do have to cover what it does. But you know, you can take a very, very small room, and you can make it into a very, very big broadcast studio very, very easily, just with a little bit of green screen and the right software for it, and some people that kind of know what they're doing.
Sport do a lot of that now, don't they? A lot of all the sport commentators are in virtual spaces, aren't they?
Yeah.
Tour of France and Euros.
There's some stuff that you wouldn't even realise is done in virtual production, like all of the football, everything that you see now. There's an element to it. Even, like most of the windows that you see, but we've done this for years and years, where windows behind presenters have been sort of video playback on there. We're all very used to that. It's not just video playback now, it's a virtual set that's behind there, so that you can actually move that content, and as the camera moves, the perspective stays correct for it. So this was the stage that I worked on at Pinewood Studios. This is when you spend a lot of money on virtual production, and this probably isn't your entry point into it. I think we maxed out at about £50 million investment for this stage, and it was only up for 3 years. And it was really a proof of technology more than anything else. 2 films were shot inside of this. It didn't make its money back, but what it did is it really kick-started the industry. So it was worth every penny of it to Industrial Light and Magic to build it. So here, this is something like 8 meters tall. It's 80 meters all the way around. It has a full ceiling of LEDs, and these 2 big doors are on a crane, so that they can be moved out the way. Set can be brought into it, and then the crane brings those doors back in again. give you a sense of scale on that, where's my mouse? This was filming Ant-Man Quantumania inside that. So this is the restaurant scene in anybody seen Ant-Man Quantumania? Yeah. This is the restaurant scene where Bill Murray turns up in there. None of us knew Bill Murray was turning up that day. Just a complete surprise to us, but he's amazing to watch. This is part of the camera tracking solution that we were using at the time. So these are little LED markers, and this is a crown. And basically these were tracked by Vicon motion capture cameras all around the edge of the volume. So that's how we know where the camera is at any one time. Here's some sort of the set design that goes on in there and the types of camera work that's happening. There's me, just with the ship behind me. And me again, this is Ian Millen. He was the producer that you just saw on the video with The Mandalorian. And there you really start to see how these things work. There's those doors up, out of the way. The size of the set that gets brought into it is just absolutely epic. And there you go, we've got a camera on a jib with, when you've got a camera like this on a crane, you need to move the crown away from it so that you don't foul the movement in the crane at all. So they have to be stuck out on arms, and then you have to create offsets for them and things like that.
Yeah, how much of that 50 million is in the LED itself, do you reckon?
Okay, so I couldn't tell you exactly on there, but the prices have dropped massively since then. This was a 2.6mm pixel pitch wall, and I think we were using a 5mm pixel pitch ceiling on there. If you counted all of the pixels in the stage and the supporting screens around it, there were nearly 1 billion pixels in that room. So the electrical draw on that stage was just phenomenal. It was like a small town. Again, these are sort of camera setups that we would use in there. Some other bits of sets. This was actually for a pilot that we did for Metropolis. Anybody? I think they've actually started releasing some of the series of it now, a remake of the Metropolis film. So this was just a pilot, but it was a full budget pilot. So it was done in exactly the same way a full film would. This is Mario Kart on a full LED wall. So when you work on a stage like that and none of the bosses are around, you can just switch in.
Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, this was Christmas one year. All the managers had gone home, so we got one of the media engineers, this guy here, Josh. He basically worked it all out so that we could use the 4 split screens, divide them up around the room, and we could have massive Mario Kart races. One day we were in there and our managers phoned us up one day. Bearing in mind we have witness cameras in here that are PTZs that can be accessed from anywhere, and our managers did phone us up one day and say, "You do know we can see what you're doing." We said, "Well, yeah, you've left us all alone, what do you expect?" This will give you an idea of the scale of this room. That's me just here. But yeah, with that ceiling in there and all the walls, these are the mocap cameras around the edge. I think it was 60 cameras we had within inside the volume. Yes?
So it's lots and lots of LED things put together.
Yes.
So why can't you see the edges of the screens?
Because, so when you build, you know at a concert where you see a massive big LED wall, that's actually made of lots and lots of bits of 500mm by 500mm panels that clip together perfectly. And you can literally scale it as much as you want. It's just a case of building a frame to be able to keep it all on. But
why does it have to be lots of little ones? Why can't it be bigger? Because they just don't have the technology to make them massive, or is it to do with resolution?
No, it's because actually by building them small, you can customize what you're building much easier. If you started to do it big, then you're stuck to certain sizes that you can make. By making it 500 by 500 panels that all just lock in together, and it's magnets that hold them all together, you kind of just push these panels up. And it's actually really impressive to watch. So the first thing we do every day as we turn this on is you have to look, when you've got 1 billion pixels, the chances of one of them being dead is very, very high. Okay? And it's almost every day when you've got 1 billion pixels that you need to change a module out of the panels. So on a 500 by 500 panel, it's made up of 4 modules in there that you can individually pull out. You get like this little Hoover machine that you put onto the front of it and it pulls the panel away. So we would do a walk around, we'd put it all to white and we'd do a walk around of it, and we would basically go around with bits of tape, putting bits of tape on anything that had a dead pixel on it. And then we had a company called VSS that were running the screens for us, and they would come in and just replace those panels for us. Back then, this was a really, really expensive process. It's got a lot cheaper now.
So these panels are for this specifically. They're not. It's not like you just get some LED TVs and sort of bolt them together. This is like
It's the same technology that you'd see at concerts and things like that. And in fact, now LED companies are actually making LED panels specifically for virtual production. When we did this, that wasn't the case, because, and in fact, all of the technologies that you see in here are repurposed technologies. Motion capture was never meant for animation or film. Motion capture was designed for the medical industry. So they used to use it to measure the gait of people with cerebral palsy before and after treatment. So it was designed so that they could put these markers on people with cerebral palsy, see how they walked, treat them, and then measure the walk afterwards, so that instead of relying on their anecdotal memory of what their walk was like, they could actually compare the 2 animations together for it. It was only when the film industry and game industry saw it and they thought, we could use that as well. And so all of the technologies that you see here are repurposed technologies. Nothing was designed for virtual production. And that's one of the challenges of virtual production, is getting loads of bits of technology that weren't supposed to work together to actually work together. And because there's so many moving parts, the LED wall flashes very, very fast. Okay, it has a refresh rate to it. So if you take your phone and you try and film your TV at home, you'll see scan lines going up and down it, and it'll flicker. The reason being is the shutter on your camera is out of phase with the flashing of the screen. So you kind of get these artifacts that come up in it. We had to solve that problem for this, and we used Genlock for it, the black and burst signal that you get in broadcast. And we basically lock the shutter speed to the refresh rate of the screen on there. And what you tend to do is have the screens running at twice the refresh rate that you have the camera running at, which means you get 2 nice clean bursts of light for every opening of the shutter on there, which pretty much guarantees you a decent image for it.
What are the sustainability energy implications of this? Because obviously it's using an enormous amount of power.
Yes.
In an age where
it's loads less power than shipping everybody to location. Okay, so the carbon footprint is actually smaller. They've done a lot of research on this. There's lots and lots of things where this becomes a benefit that people didn't even think of. One of the other benefits is family as well. If you work in the film industry, a lot of the time you were being shipped to location and you could be there for 3 months on location. Whereas if everybody's in a studio that's close to home, they can go back to their family in the evening. So there's a lot of benefits, and sustainability is one of them that people didn't even realise. They did this for a technical advantage, but there's so many other advantages to it that kind of just happened as accidents.
If you film on the top, something where you're bridging like the ceiling and the wall,
yeah,
yes, you're still just comping out those cameras in post.
Yes, so that's a very interesting point. One of the goals that we were set when we were filming, when we did Ant-Man and the Batman, we were targeted on how many in-camera final shots we were achieving, because Industrial Light and Magic wanted to boast about how little post-production they needed. So the ceiling really is only there for lighting. Okay, you shouldn't really shoot the ceiling. It's a different pixel pitch to the wall. The pixel pitch is the distance between each pixel. So from the center of one pixel to the center of the next, the measurement of that is what we call the pixel pitch. This was a 2.6, this was 5. So if you point the camera up, it wouldn't look as good. And there's an effect that you may have seen before where if you get a camera and you point it at an LED wall, you start to see these sort of geometric patterns start appearing in what you're doing. That's called a moire effect. And what the camera's actually doing is the sensor starts to see the geometry and starts trying to predict a geometry in there, because the sensor doesn't actually show you what it's seeing. it's showing you what it's predicting. So the moire effect is coming from the algorithms in the sensor messing things up for you. So if you'd have pointed the camera up, you'd have got terrible moire effects on there. But there were some shots where it was necessary to do, and that's exactly right. You just, if the cameras come into shot, they just get comped out afterwards. But it did affect our statistics, and the directors weren't happy about it.
I mean, you talk about it, it's interesting because really we're going back to the Hollywood studio system then, aren't we? You know, the idea of everything, I mean, obviously in LA they could use the weather because it never changed. But essentially that's what you're talking about, that's the same model, isn't it? Where it becomes studio-based production again.
Really, there's no... Remember the shots in like the old James Bond movies where he was driving his car and they've got a projector behind him and it's just like the video playing. This is no different to that, other than the fact that on those old James Bond shots, the camera was in a locked position. Because if the camera had ever moved, the illusion would have fallen apart because the perspective wouldn't change. All this does is solves that perspective problem, really. And it solves a few problems in sort of green screen where you don't get the correct lighting on things like that, reflections and all those sorts of things. So by solving that one perspective problem, loads of other problems got solved at the same time.
Do you have to just, oh, I'm so sorry, do you have to adjust for depth of field as well, or is that just...
Okay, so you can, there's very, very few cases where you really need to. So if you're filming against this, because of the moire effect that you get, you have to have your talent a certain distance away from the screen anyway, which means your screen should always be out of focus, okay, because your talent is here. Now you can take a physlogger, we call it, focus, iris and zoom, that measures the focus off wheels on the side of the lens, and then it posts it back into Unreal Engine, so you can affect the depth of field on the wall. The problem with that is that you end up with a double focus on it then, because you're actually focusing the lens and Unreal Engine's doing the focus as well. So there's very few times where that's really used.
In the natural world, that would be about aperture as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the other one that people ask about is zoom. Okay, so when you're using zoom, this is more of a broadcast than a film problem. We don't tend to use zoom lenses in films other than for like a dolly zoom shot. Like, remember the shot in Jaws where the trees will warp behind him as he realises the shark's
that realisation thing.
Other than really stylised shots like that, you're never going to use a zoom in there. So it's always a prime lens on there. So zoom doesn't really come into it. Your aperture, you're not going to change it in shot. It's it's going to be pretty much set. So you just set it in Unreal Engine as to what the aperture is. On a zoom lens, if you did want to use it in broadcast, we have to create what's called a lens file, which measures the distortion at the different ends of the zoom on there, and then corrects for it. So there's also slightly different colour properties to every lens as well. So when you're doing very, very high-end stuff like this, we tend to take every single lens into the volume first, we put it on a camera, we flash loads and loads of different colours into the camera and record that, so that we can create a profile of the lens, which then corrects the LED walls so that all of the lenses come back into line with each other again, which you can't do in the real world, so that's an advantage over the real world. Now obviously this is huge, you guys probably haven't even got the space, let alone the money, to build something like this, but it doesn't need to be big. This is something that we've just built for Westminster Kingsway College. And this is, I think it's a 5 metre by 4 metre screen with a ceiling above it. And what you can't see in this picture is angled sort of towards that screen. There's a row of single LED panels angled 45 degrees into the stage, just to cast some light onto the talent as you sit there. Because obviously, if you stand somebody in front of an LED wall and point a camera at them, you won't see anything of the person. You're only going to see the wall. So you do need some light to, oh actually I might. There we go, there's that 45-degree panel. That was during setup, so it's all messed up at the moment. But that's just there to just cast a little bit of light onto your subject. But also, on the truss and stuff now that this is a finished project, there is also lots of DMX lighting on there as well. And using Unreal Engine, you can output the image from Unreal Engine onto all of the LED walls using end display, but you can also use the DMX plugin to drive the lights so that it's image-based lighting from the DMX scene as well.
Yeah, so the DOP then, in terms of the implications for lighting, does everything still aesthetically go through the DOP? So
Yes.
the DOP would be the person asking you to change the light levels where, yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
I worked with Greg Fraser on the Batman for it. The reason why he wanted to do it in one of these volumes is because there were so many sunset scenes in there. It would have just taken them years to film that if they'd have tried to do it outdoors. But you've got 45 minutes a day of sunset, and it's changing all the way through it. Which, the amount of times I watch a film now where there's a sunset scene, and you can tell where they've been getting to the last few moments of sunset because it's getting a little bit dark, and you know it was a little bit rushed to get that scene done. Well, if you can just lock that sunset exactly where it is, and then the DOP can come in and go, well, actually, I want the sunset moved slightly round that way, and within 2 minutes you've got exactly what he was asking for. But virtual production works really, really well in those sort of Batman style scenes where you've got that silhouetted, that very iconic silhouette of Batman with the ears and the mask and stuff, and then that orange background to it. Those are the types of shots that work really, really well in virtual production.
I know you've got lots of skeptics.
No,
so there's a sort of, I mean, it's obvious in a way, but there's a sort of post-production that's in pre-production in as much that's all got to be filmed.
You don't get rid of production,
together,
you just move it from after the process to before the process.
But it's all got to be joined panoramically, hasn't it, as well? So it's,
Yeah, so when you build the Unreal Engine scene, end display that drives everything, it's a really, really clever tool. Basically what you do in end display is if I go back to this, in end display I use some meshes that are the same size as the walls, okay? And I create a blueprint in Unreal Engine that mirrors where those are exactly, okay? Then I take what we call a viewport and I place that into the scene somewhere. That viewport is projecting in the same way that this is. If you think of it as a projector, it projects its vision of the world onto the meshes that you've put on there. You then tell end display to take all of those meshes and project them out onto the LED panels, and that's how we get the world. So once you've got that set up, you can literally turn the entire Unreal Engine scene around and every LED panel matches and it all just works in real time. So yeah, it allows the director to play God a little bit in there, and you know, if that tree's in the wrong place, move it. If the sun's in the wrong place, move it. Okay, now I want to go from middle of the day time to sunset. You can do this in seconds just with sliders in Unreal Engine.
Forgive me here for stating obviously. So you've got this screen, which is your actors in front of that one.
Yes.
And then that's the only thing that the camera's recording.
Yes.
But then in Unreal you've got
everything.
You've got everything else that's created in Unreal.
Yes.
But you're sort of, for one of about masking out that bit which is actually.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. All you're doing is creating like a viewport into it, basically. You're adding windows out into this sort of 3D world. And then this ceiling is just here to light the subject. That's all that's there for. And again, I think now, this is how far the LED technology has come on. In the example I gave you earlier of the Industrial Light and Magic one, it was a 2.6mm pixel pitch. That was the best money could buy at the time. This is a 1.9 in there, and this has gone into a university. Yes, it's much smaller, but the technology's a lot better. And when you're working in a smaller environment, you need that pixel pitch shrinking so that you don't get that Mario effect coming into your camera more, because you've got less distance to film on. On the big stage, we had like 3 meters from the edge of the screen to where the set started. They're never going to achieve that in this room, so you need to squeeze that pixel pitch as much as possible.
It works the opposite way around, doesn't it, for like live stuff, so you can crop out the screen and just do a set extension of Unreal. So like, just feed that into the camera.
Yeah, you can do set extensions. If you want to do set extensions, it helps to have some other software as well. Something like Stipe or Gnosis is very good at doing those things. You can do it just natively in Unreal Engine, but you're going to need someone who's very, very good in Unreal Engine to make it look really stable on there. The other thing is that you probably want another computer to render the set extension as to what's rendering this. Otherwise, the processing power is just going to
Just has to go on real time.
yeah. And the computers that run these, the real-time engines, are all locked to that timecode and genlock signal that the cameras and the LED walls are locked to. So everything is always locked to that signal. So yeah, your set extension and these would have to match up in genlock and timecode as well. But yeah, you need different machines running them.
Are you able to say how much that setup costs at that university, or are you?
It would be very difficult for me to tell you that because we did so many rooms for them that it kind of got lost in all of the other rooms, didn't it? And I don't tend to talk about money. That's it. That's all it is. That's kind of important actually. Like Ben is much more from the sales team. I'm a technology specialist. I don't care how much things cost. I care how cool they are and how well they're going to do the job for you. So this was the ceiling, and you can see that moire effect here. This is because I've just shot this on my phone, and you know it's starting to pick up all of the. And obviously, the reason why this is all patchwork like that is because we send the signal out to a Brompton. The Brompton is the LED processor that drives all of these LED panels. So you feed a signal into the Brompton. You then use a canvas to say where everything's going, and this is me trying to do a canvas for it, which is a bit like one of those slider games that you know, like move around. It's like, where does that match to that? That can take some time sometimes if you mess things up. But then you can create some scenes with some depth to it. This is just a free scene that was downloadable from Unreal Engine, and yeah, you get some depth into the scene.
How does a single panel give you parallax then?
Okay, so there's no camera and no frustum on here at the moment.
Right.
Okay, so the moment you put a camera in here and you track it, we put what's called a frustum on the wall. The frustum is a box that gets drawn on it, which is the same size as what the lens is seeing. Okay. The reason we do that is because anything outside of that box we don't care about at all. We only care about what the lens is seeing. So I can drop the resolution of everything outside the box to save performance on your graphics card, okay? Because all it's really doing is going to be contributing to the light of the scene. So it can be really, really low resolution. Then we can bump up the resolution of the box that's in the middle of it, and then as you move the camera, that box moves on the screen in real time with it. It's normally about a 3 to 6 frame delay on there. But if you overscan the size of the frustum a little bit, you don't notice that delay at all. And then within that box, you see the parallax happening in there.
So that was your set. Sorry, there's going to be loads of interrupted.
No worries.
That would be one of your upsells from a green screen then?
Yes, a green screen does it slightly differently, of course, because obviously a green screen, you've not got your projected background on there, you've just got green. So all we do is we key somebody out, and with Unreal Engine, we create another plate coming out with the same camera perspective, and we just lay the two together. So yeah, it works in exactly the same way, it's just we're using a post-production keying process in real time. Like, that's all it is. We call it offline keying.
I'm just thinking of the benefit. So I would just worry with a flat screen if there was no more benefits than just doing it on a green. But there is clearly. It's giving you depth.
Reflections, light, everything. Like you'll get the depth from green screen and stuff. And in fact, I wouldn't say LEDs are better than green screen or green screen's better than LED. They're both tools that you've got in the box, and sometimes, even on an LED stage, you're better off just putting a big green panel on there and keying what's on there. Because what you can do, especially if you're unsure as to what's going on around it, we did this sometimes when, in Ant-Man Quantumania, obviously the characters are talking to some fairly sort of outrageous characters on there that are aliens and things. Well, if they don't know what the alien looks like at that time, all they would do is they would put a big green box behind the talent, have the rest of it with the scene in there so that it's lit properly, and then you can key that bit out later in post-production. So they're all tools in the box. And actually, using this as a green screen is better than a green screen, because on a green screen you have to light it evenly. With this, it's lit evenly straight away. You just pick your green and it's exactly the same on there. So you get no keying issues on there at all.
I mean, I'm interested in it for live cinematography as well in terms of theatre and stuff, so it's so much like is that, I mean, I'm guessing, is that about 24 panels, and is it flown or is it freestanding?
This one is ground stacked, so yeah, this is built up off the floor, but we've done one for Queen's University Belfast, which is which we've hung from the ceiling because they had a big steel frame in there which would support the weight of it. You're better off hanging them from the ceiling because counterintuitively you can get them closer to the floor if you hang them from the ceiling, because if you ground stack them there's these feet that you have to stick underneath them. Now the problem that causes is if you want to get someone's feet into shot, okay, really the LED panels need to go lower than their feet do, because so if you're filming here, the best that they can really achieve is knee to head shots here, otherwise the perspective gets messed up because the angle's wrong on there. So really what you should do here is build up a slight stage with stage decks in front of it. That way then the LEDs drop off behind the stage, so as the camera moves up you kind of see over the edge, at which point you can almost do over a cliff shot where you can kind of get a bit of vertigo out of people as they
You could do a
look
little
over.
rake or something, couldn't you?
Yeah. Now, this is really important actually. If you just stick somebody in front of this and put a camera on them, people will tell that it's an LED wall really, really quickly, you know. There's certain, and especially if the camera's static and the background is static, it just looks fake, okay? What you really need to do to sell this illusion is have lots of foreground set in there that matches with the stuff that's going on in the background, and you need movement in there, be it camera movement, talent movement, anything going on that just stops people's eyes from zeroing in on stuff, you know. You've got to remember, everything we're doing is an illusion, it's all smoke and mirrors, right? It's all,
Do actors report that they can act better in front of a...
Yes. Yeah,
is that like a note? So it's actually...
Yeah, they much prefer it.
I heard that from Mandalorian, but I didn't know that.
There's some cases where that's not true. One of them is if you're doing vehicle processing. When you're doing vehicle processing, you get the same problem that people get in VR, which is they can start to feel a little bit sick on there. The other one that causes people problems is if you want to do 2 camera angles in there, that causes a problem because you have this frustum that comes up that's got the perspective of camera 1, and then you've got camera 2 that's got a different perspective to it. Well, if the 2 of those cross, which perspective do you correct for? To solve that problem, we do something called Brompton remapping, which means we flash 1 frame from one perspective and 1 frame from the next perspective, and then we alternate the shutters on the camera so that each one's seeing different things, okay? Now if you imagine, it gets very, very complicated when you're doing stuff like that. So if you imagine I had one camera where I wanted to film a red background and 1 camera where I wanted to film a blue background. We flash red and blue, and what that looks like when you're in there is kind of a purple, but it kind of feels a little bit flickery. Anyone with epilepsy would be like in trouble in that room. And we've had directors, we've had actors that can only spend a few minutes in that situation. It does get fairly unbearable.
So how do you work that around like stylized frame rates, like the slow motion and things?
Okay, so you can set it to any frame rate that you want.
Yeah.
You know?
Can you lower the refresh rate of the LED screens?
Okay, so
because you were saying earlier, they flash twice.
Yeah, okay, so it depends whether we're talking about the refresh rate or the internal refresh rate. Okay, so you've got the internal refresh rate is the sort of scan lines that it's doing. So when this LED wall happens, each one of the panel actually lights up in lines or banks of 3 lines normally. It's just happening so quickly that you don't see it. What you're talking about is the refresh rate of the image that's coming out. So that image refresh rate we can set to anything. Basically, you could do it at 4 frames a second if you wanted to. It would look a little bit weird, but you know, if you wanted to do something that looked more like an old Disney sort of animation, then 4 frames a second would work pretty well in there. But normally, you know, when you're doing stuff for film, you know, 24, 25 frames a second, something like that, and then you just set the wall to double whatever it is, basically. So yeah, it can accommodate any refresh rate on there. And because everything, we would normally have a time code and genlock generator. Most of the time we use something called Nevert's Master Clock, which is a very, very high-end clock, basically, which syncs everything up together. They're not cheap, but they're really, really worth it. So again, more small scale. This is the LED ceiling being built just here, and here you can see those 500 by 500 modules. Each one of them has a little processor on the back here, and then 4 individual modules for each one of them. And you can see there where this is where I've not calibrated the screen yet. So as you put all of the modules on there, they kind of light up slightly differently. You have to use the software in the Brompton to kind of pull them all back into line with each other.
So is that about, I'm still trying to work, is that about 6 by 8 panels? What is it? How many panels?
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think it's 6 by 10 or something like that, yeah.
So there's about 60 panels in there, that's amazing.
Yeah, and you know, that's about as small as you can go with an LED wall, because really, it needs to be bigger than the vision of your lens. Yeah. You know, the frustum needs to fit within it, unless you're going to do a set extension, and then things get more expensive the moment you want to do that. Again, this is then putting the LED panels in and raising it all up. These are some of our freelance engineers. This is some of the results that they can get from there. So this was the first training course that we did on that LED wall. Obviously this is a picture of a TV of what's going on there, so it's not a brilliant result of it, but you can see evidence of the fact that we've used some DMX lighting. This is reflections of the DMX lighting on there, which is what's giving him that sort of golden look down the front of him, and then we had some blue ones of those the other side to give him the blue look here. So you've got to match the light, because there's no side lighting of him, we needed to match the lighting up. So we just used some DMX batten lighting, some RGB lights. No problem, all works. Green screen. This is Ravensbourne University. What I designed for them was a metaverse catwalk. So this is a fully motion captured catwalk with green screen behind it. They do a lot of fashion, digital fashion stuff there. So the idea for them is that they want to be able to put somebody in a motion capture suit, have a, we kind of took inspiration from Ready Player One on it, where, you know, like, what's the bar called in Ready Player One? Ready Player One fans?
Yeah, I know you mean.
Yeah, yeah. There's a bar there where they all turn up in their own sort of avatars with amazing clothing on, and that's kind of what we wanted for them to be able to do, is to be able to just have any sort of avatar that they wanted. So in here they can do motion capture, but they can put a background in, right? This is Tony Ellis, one of our guys, and this is just one of the basic Unreal scenes. This was during testing. But it shows you that in real time, from a green screen, you can still get virtual production results from it. And we've got DMX lighting all the way around the top of it, so that we can use the DMX plugin from Unreal Engine to drive those lights, so that as the scene moves, the lights just change automatically. You don't have to relight the scene every time. And there's another one of it, that's another one of our guys, Elliot. That was some of the tests on there. So, with your camera, you mentioned parallax and stuff. With virtual production, always good to have a rail on your camera. Don't just put it on a pedestal. You kind of destroy the point of virtual production with it on a pedestal. Pedestals are great for broadcast, terrible for film, and terrible for virtual production. Because what this does is it gives you the ability to do that nice, smooth slide from side to side, which means any trees in the background start to do that parallaxing on there. And that was, you know, when you're testing things like this, it's just my coat on a mic stand. And then that's kind of the output from it. So this was a Mars scene, just downloaded from the Unreal Engine marketplace. You can have something up in a few minutes. You mentioned ABBA earlier. So I was one of the motion capture technicians on the ABBA shoot. We all went out to Stockholm. I got caught in Stockholm as lockdown kicked off. But I am one of the few people in the world that has been in the same room with all 4 ABBA people together without them arguing with each other. Quite amazing. So this, if anybody doesn't know about that, we've got another little video. So this is more about performance capture. So mocap and facial capture. This is the real high-end stuff of it. There's much cheaper ways. Is that going to start? Yes. Oh, no, let me get back. I just wanted to mention. Oh, where's it gone? Yeah. The reason we did this is because ABBA didn't want to do their music video being old. So they came to Industrial Light and Magic and said, we want to look how we did in our heyday. We want to do a full music video and live concert of us in our prime.
And that's, but it's a bit sad as well.
Yeah, but what a challenge, you know, to take these people and sort of try and match them up as much as possible. So to make this, we had all these waxworks heads made of them and like loads of replica clothes just as reference and stuff. It was a really crazy process to go through, but it was really, really cool. And you'll see just how complicated some of it was. Okay, so when they approached us for this, and a lot of the time we're working at Industrial Light and Magic, there isn't off-the-shelf products for what you want to do. So you kind of have to make things to do some of those things. Now, you'll see a lot now with performance capture, people wear these head cams with like frames on them with a camera and a light pointing back at their face. There were some available at the time, but that wasn't going to work very well for the ABBA sequence. One of the reasons being is that they're very active, they're moving around a lot, and we didn't want to interrupt their mannerisms and flow with it. So we came up with a system called Medusa and Anima, which you will have seen there, which was these big bits of scaffolding with just hundreds of cameras all over it. So we were actually capturing their faces from so many different angles, and we were capturing at such high megapixel that you could zoom in and see individual pores in the skin. So a lot of the time when you do facial capture, we draw dots on people's faces so that we can track the movements of the dots as their expressions change. With the Medusa and Anima system, we didn't need the dots anymore because you can literally use the individual pores in their skin.
Doesn't the tracking get confused? Doesn't the tracker get confused between the pores?
It does, but you have a manual process that goes back in and corrects for it, basically. It's a very, very slow process, but the results of it are phenomenal. Yeah. I mentioned earlier about the film The One and Only Ivan. This was one of the first really heavy performance capture and camera tracking films before virtual production happened. This was the one that we did with Danny DeVito. And again, if you haven't seen this, go and watch it. It's a really, really amazing film.
Why do they want an angry gorilla anyway? You're a silverback. He terrifies humans.
We did do facial capture. We had a camera on Ben Bishop, the guy that played Ivan throughout the virtual process, but we didn't use it. You know, it was, you know, as with motion capture and
so they only used it as reference in the end, but it's still there.
Depending on what it is sometimes quicker and easier and more creative and more, you get better results by hand doing it. In terms of bringing that to screen, that performance to screen, how we do it is a hell of a lot of reference gathering. Lots of dogs, lots of gorillas to kind of tap into what makes an animal, right? And knowing its nuances, knowing its quirks and its ear flicks and its little idiosyncrasies that they do.
This was a movie that the animals had to be completely photorealistic. Yet at the same time, are we pushing it far enough? Is there enough pathos or humor or sadness in those expressions? Should we push it a little bit more, or have we pushed it too far and we're sort of slipping into the uncanny valley where you start to go, no, that's not a real animal, they don't do that, they wouldn't do that. So that's a very difficult balance, and that was something that we fought with on every shot. It was a discussion that went from the heads of the studio all the way down, you know, through the movie.
So we captured scene by scene, you know, so we captured what we called a master scene from beginning to end. The animators back at NBC would then take the chess pieces that we captured for Bob and Ruby and Stella and all the other animals and animate them, the whole master scene, you know, from beginning to end, without any kind of camera. We hadn't shot any camera at that stage. It was all kind of like just as a scene would play out. And so by the end of, you know, that process, you know, we had every scene that we were going to shoot virtually playing out as a master scene.
That would then go onto our virtual stage. And now we're into the virtual stage. We could go into the scene. First of all, we would do it in VR, so we put the headsets on. Now you can go into the scene. You can look around while the master scene is playing out. And we could go into it with the DP and with the director, and we could say, right, so here's the scene. How are we going to film this? So once we looked at it in VR, we then went onto the virtual stage, and there we actually had a film crew, and we were able to now literally film these virtual clips. And we could change lenses, they could pull focus, you know, there's nothing there, but everything is up on big screens. The reason that we did that as well was, you know, it puts the filming of it back into the filmmaker's hands.
The stuff for ABBA was very much about the performers, but afterwards with Ivan, it's not just about the performers, but the camera work as well. Camera work was less important in the ABBA stuff because it's for a live audience, so it's kind of just from everybody's perspective. Whereas, I don't know if you picked up on that, when we filmed this, we filmed all of the performance capture in one filming session. All of that performance capture was then taken by the animators, finalised into a scene, which we then brought back into the studio with cameras on cranes and jibs, but with nothing in the studio, just the cranes and the jibs and tracking the movement of it. But we could then put that camera movement out from Unreal Engine onto big screens so that the camera people could actually see what they were filming, even though there was nothing in front of them. Now, you could do that with an Xbox controller, right? You know, you could just make the motions on an Xbox controller. But what they wanted was for the weight and sort of feel of the camera movement to be the same as a traditional feel. So when you've got a camera jib and you've got or a dolly that's got two people sat on it moving the camera, two people moving it, there's a certain motion to those things, the way it ramps into the movement and the way it slows down from it as well. These are all things that you don't notice in the shot, but if you try changing them, it looks odd, you know, like we'll probably see some of that later when we get into Unreal Engine, and it's like it's really difficult to replicate some of that stuff. So being able to use the proper equipment to control a camera in the virtual world was very important to them when they filmed this, and the results of it are really, really
watched it. Presumably this is what they've done with that Robbie Williams film as well.
Robbie Williams film?
The Robbie Williams film where he's an ape.
Oh right, yeah, yeah.
Thing, or is that similar?
So there were some really interesting challenges to film a gorilla from a person because, you know, we're not the same proportion as a gorilla. So when you motion capture someone, you have to alter the proportions of the person that you're working with. You'll have seen this on the makings of stuff where they have little stubby stilts for their hands so that they can walk on their hands. And all we do is move the markers from the back of the hands down to the end of the stilts, so it looks like they've got longer arms. But also, on a human, their arms sit very close to their side. Well, a gorilla's sides are out like this, so their arms sit like this. So if you let your actor drop his arms down, they disappear inside the gorilla itself, and that's no good. So we had to create like these kidney-shaped cushions to sit underneath his arms to stop him sitting his arms down properly, so he had to walk around like this all day. The other problem, and this is Nobody's ever had to do this in their job other than me, I don't think. When a gorilla sits down, as they sit like this, their bum touches the floor much quicker than a human's would. So you can't sit in the same way that a gorilla did. So we had to create a prosthetic bum for him to sit on, basically, that was like a nappy with this sort of big sort of backside to it that allowed him to sit in the same position that a gorilla would. So when you're doing performance capture stuff, you constantly have to be thinking about the motions of what it is that you're trying to capture. We did, have anyone seen Maleficent, the Mistress of Evil? Yeah. In there they've got these tree people. They start off as trees with their roots in the ground, and as they come alive, they have to pull their roots out of the ground to start walking. Well, if you try and get somebody to act that, it's going to look terrible, you know, no matter how good an actor or mime they are, it will just look awful. So you have to kind of give them some assistance in it. The first thing we did to test this process was we used sandbags around the actors. And the actor that we used to start with was 7'6" tall, because we wanted him to have that tree stature to him. We put sandbags around his ankles so that he had to really lift his leg. The problem that that caused is it's fine on the back motion of the leg, but as the leg gets past the pendulum point here, it swings, and then you end up with it straightening the kneecap. And nobody ever straightens their kneecap. So if you do that, it looks like a really weird walk. So in the end, we had to get resistance straps, like the elastic straps, tie those to the sandbags on there, and we would literally walk behind him, like restricting the movements of his legs as he walked up the stage on it. So you're always trying to add weight and proportion into things when you're doing performance capture and motion capture. In terms of props and things like that as well, anything when you're doing motion capture, if somebody picks something up, you need to have something for them to pick up, right? Or a door that they open. If I get somebody to try and open a door just acting, their arm's not going to follow a perfect curve, you know? It's got a fulcrum on a door where the lever moves from a certain point, you know? So unless you follow that perfectly, it will just look terrible. So you have to build something that doesn't occlude the vision of the motion capture system that you've got, but allows the actor to follow the proper motions.
It's like a really funny link for me, because back in the 80s when I was a performance trainer, my mime trainer was one of the apes in Greystoke.
Right, yeah, yeah.
And he told me about, I mean, this is back in the 80s for any of this stuff, and he told me about how they literally lived with the apes at London Zoo for weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
But he was very aware of that door thing as well, because he always says, in terms of mime, I'm going to do a bit of mime now, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go
but
for
in
it.
terms of mime, you have to have that plane there, so that when you kind of do, you know, you go like that, and then you kind of step through the door and do bam, so you get that. But if you try and teach that to students, they go like that.
Yeah. Well, really, you know, a mime on the street that you see, he can get away with it not looking great, yeah? But the moment you're in an animation and you're trying to attach that hand to a door handle in a scene, you know, the moment it moves, you're going to have to retarget where the hand is going in there in the animation. The moment you retarget the hand, you're going to put movement into the shoulder, movement into the back, and it's going to flow through the entire body in there, and it will just mess things up. One of the great examples of this is if you're trying to motion capture somebody walking, for a game, for instance, you need to cycle the walk that they do, because you want it to be able to go on forever and ever and ever in a game. Well, you don't have unlimited space to motion capture them. So what you do is you capture 6 steps of them. The first step is from 2 feet together, yeah, and then you do your 6 steps, and the last one is their feet together again. So the first step and the last step are unusable in that process because the feet are together. The 4 steps in between it, you then loop, basically. And with modern technology, you can kind of randomise the loop a little bit as well, so that it doesn't look like a very wooden walk as they do it. Well, if you've got a very small stage like the Westminster Kingsway one, they haven't got room to get that up. And if you then want to do runs, you know, your first 3 steps of a run aren't a proper run on there, you're not at full speed yet, and then you've got to stop them at the other end as well. So then you need a really, really long place to motion capture them. The other thing you can do is you can put them on a treadmill to do it, and then you can just capture the motion of them doing it in place and add the translation in afterwards in the animation. That's fine, but if you show me a motion capture of somebody walking properly and somebody walking on a treadmill, I can tell you which one was which. because when you walk or run in a run, it's more exaggerated. What you essentially are doing is moving your head forward and then allowing your feet to stop you from falling on there. That's how a walk works. And when you're running, it's even more pronounced. Your head goes down and your feet are literally just stopping the fall that you're doing. It's a controlled fall. On a treadmill, that's not happening because the treadmill is creating the motion for you, so you don't tip your head forward. So people run very upright on a treadmill. It just looks wrong to me. Most people probably wouldn't notice the difference. If you've done it for 15 years, you can tell straight away. I can also tell you, just looking from motion capture data, if someone's a man or a woman in there, because their walks are completely different from each other.
This is where I think like potential collaborations between media production and our performers is really exciting and relevant for them to be able to begin to play around with some of these problems, you know, and experience them. It's just really exciting.
It's one of the great things about this type of job is actually, one of the things I used to love about motion capture is just every shot that you did posed some sort of new challenge that you hadn't thought of before, like crazy. So here's kind of a basic virtual production adoption plan that you could kind of bear in mind as to sort of how the university wants to progress things forward. So step one is to learn some software, and we can start that process today. We'll jump into some Unreal Engine, but actually getting some people that really know Unreal Engine and are really proficient with it is going to be vital for you. Whether you've got people here, hands up any who uses Unreal Engine already and knows how to use it. You know how to use it? What sort of grade would you give yourself? C. All right. Beginner. All right. Okay. So yeah, like either upskilling yourself or looking for talent that's out there that are people that already know it. There's probably students here that are messing around with it at home that you don't even know about. You know, this is the sort of thing that the right sort of kid is at home on his computer every night, fiddling around with these sorts of things. It's such an Unreal Engine is such a rabbit hole when you get involved in it. Like there's so much stuff that you can do in it that it captures kids and they get lost in it. So step two would be to invest in some entry-level hardware, and I would suggest some sort of camera tracking for that, and potentially a green screen on it. That's your kind of entry level to virtual production. Is you need to be able to track where your camera is, and you need to be able to key the background out of it. There's different levels of camera tracking that you can do. So anybody heard of the Vive Mars? Yeah?
We've got a couple of those.
You've got a couple of Vive Mars? Brilliant. So we've actually already got some of the stuff that we need for it, and you can start using it straight away. You can actually start using that without green screen, because you could do augmented reality into the real world rather than changing the background. You're bringing something into the real world on there. Wes sent me the models of, what's that model called? The little robot thing? Snappy. Yeah, you know, bringing that thing into the real world and having it interact with people would be a really cool sort of introduction to it. How many Vive Marses have you got?
I think we've got two, haven't we?
Yeah,
we've got one. I think I thought we had one.
Isn't there more, Andy, in the backup?
No, there's one, but they come with two.
Oh, so you've got one system with two pucks?
Two pucks, yeah.
Perfect. And what cameras do you have? What's your highest end camera? Okay.
Got black magic pockets.
Okay. So at some point we can set up a follow-up workshop where we can get some of that going and actually do some virtual production. Do it right? Sounds good. So camera tracking is the best entry point into it. A mid-tier setup. This is where I would start doing some sort of motion capture in there as well. There's different ways we can do this. Just to go back to camera tracking for a second. There's two main types of camera tracking out there. The Vive Mars doesn't fit into any of them. So the Vive Mars is kind of a system on its own. But the two main types of camera tracking are what we call outside in and inside out tracking systems. The one that you saw on the big stage at Pinewood was an outside in tracking system. What that means is the cameras that are doing all the tracking are outside and what you're tracking is inside. Okay, so we're looking from the outside and tracking something here. So we use an array of cameras, and then we stick little markers all over the camera that reflect the light back up to those cameras, and we can track where they are. An inside-out tracking system is more like the MOSIS style of stuff. You'll have heard of MOSIS as a virtual production provider. They use these little silver dots that they stick all over the ceiling, and then they have one camera that sticks up looking at where those dots are, tracking the motion of the camera that way. Some people prefer one method, some people prefer the other. Personally, I think the outside-in tracking systems work a lot better. One of the reasons why, and this is kind of a stage thing, is that with an outside-in tracking system, you've got redundancy built into it. So if you've got 60 cameras tracking what's going on in the centre of the stage, and one of those cameras breaks, you can still get to the end of your shot and not have to worry about it too much. Which means if you've got 3 high-end actors on stage that all hit their beats on time, all get their lines right, and the director's really happy with it, if your tracking goes wrong at that point, you're off, you're gone, you're fired. You know, that's it, done. So the inside-out tracking systems give you no redundancy on there. You've got one camera tracking the motion of it, and there's an offset between where that camera is and the sensor of the camera, and that has to stay the same. So if somebody walks past and bumps that camera, you've got to recalibrate that. On an inside-out tracking system, that'll take about 20 minutes to do. On a Vicon system, the outside-in one, it'll take you 5 minutes to redo if the calibration was out.
Presumably though, the inside-out is a lot cheaper, is that?
That's
right?
the myth. Yes,
That's
right.
it.
So if you just want to track one camera, you're probably right.
Yeah.
But with an outside-in tracking system, I can track as many cameras as I want with the same license on there, because all I've got to do is stick more markers onto it. Whereas with an inside-out system, I've got to buy a whole new camera chain every single time for it. So there's an economy of scale that's involved in it. If you just want to do one camera, sure, it probably is cheaper.
With the outside-in one, can you get away with any like occlusion? Like you've got 3/4 of the cameras that can see the tracker, or do you all got to be able to see?
No, not all of them. You need, and in fact, there's a setting in the Shogun software for Vicon where you can tell it how many cameras it needs to be able to see the markers for it to include the data in there. So normally what we say is, for a static object, it needs to have 3 cameras seeing it at that moment. The moment its trajectory starts, you can go down to 2 cameras, but for a start of the trajectory, it should have 3 on there. But, you know, if you've got 60 cameras on there, you can get away with quite a bit of occlusion on there at that point. There's 2 different ways of marking the camera up. You can either use a passive marker, which is just a board with retroreflective tape on there, which is the 3M tape that you see on street signs that reflects like back in the direction that it came from, basically. Or you can use an active marker, which is an infrared LED that means you can then turn the infrared lamps off on the cameras around the room and it emits its own infrared. That means you can get slightly better tracking, and there's no risk of there being any infrared interference in the final shot as well on there. Most cameras these days, the infrared filters on them are pretty good, so it shouldn't make a difference, but some directors do get a bit funny about stuff like that. So yeah, camera tracking, those are the 2 main types of it. I would always suggest an outside-in. The Vive Mars is kind of a thing on its own, so that doesn't fall into either of them, but it's a perfectly good setup for getting started with, and a lot of indie places are using those, so really it would be good to get it set up and use it. So upgrade to motion capture. If you do your camera tracking right, you get your motion capture for free on there. Because if you use a Vicon tracking system for your camera, it will track people as well. Because all you're doing is sticking dots to things and tracking them. So actually, if you kind of move the investment from here up to here, you can kind of swap those around and save yourself a bit of money in the process.
We've got a Neuron 3 perception, Neuron 3 capture kit.
Neuron 3. I'll have to have a look at that. I don't know every single one of them, unfortunately. I try and keep on top of most of them, but you know, most camera tracking things will do a good enough job for you to start working through principles of what you're doing. It just depends on what the final output needs to look like as to whether it's going to be good enough for it. One of the reasons why people like Marvel and Disney want that Vicon label above the door when they do camera tracking is because it's a trusted name and they've got the redundancy built into it. And when stage 4 at Pinewood, for someone to rent that stage for a day, anyone want to have a guess as to how much that costs per day as a dry hire? £250,000 per day. Yeah. So if the camera tracking fails at any point and it's offline for 10 minutes, that's a very unhappy director at that point. He's losing money every minute of the day at that point. Prices have come down since then, but that was 250 grand a day. Okay, and then when you go up, you can get up to some big budget tech like LED walls and things, adding some DMX lighting and stuff like that in there. So those are kind of the main points that you would work through in trying to get virtual production set up. But today, we're going to do some cheap stuff, and we're going to go to the bit of virtual production that everybody forgets about, which is pre-visualization. So pre-visualization is a very, very low resolution example of the shot that people are trying to do. So this is the jungle chase scene from Indiana Jones. And you can see the animations aren't great, but it just gives people an idea of what the camera angles are going to be, what the actors are going to be doing, how the music times up with stuff. It's just a way of communicating to the crew what that shot needs to look like, ready for them to do it. And this is what we're going to have a little bit of a go at in a bit on Unreal Engine. So this is all hand animated pre-visualization. You could do this with motion capture as well. So if you wanted to make it a little bit better than this, you could add someone in a motion capture suit. It would also speed that process up. Hand animating takes time. Stick someone in a motion capture suit, you can get the work done in a day. But you see, like the legs don't move, she's going through doors and stuff. It's just a representation. It doesn't need to look great. Another great thing about doing it like this, you've probably seen enough of that, we get the idea. Another great thing about doing that is the composers can start working on this before the film's finished. We did things like John Williams doing Indiana Jones and Star Wars and stuff. He needed to see the final results of the film before he could time things up to it. And then you've got to edit to the music once he's done it. Well, with pre-visualization, you can get an idea where your cuts are going to go. Your music composers can get stuck into it a lot earlier in the process. Let's get back into the slideshow. So, virtual production visualization guide. I'll play a little bit of this. We might not want to watch all of what's going on in here, but this is just a slightly higher end version of what I was showing you then. This is sort of an in-studio sort of, there's also what we call virtual scouting as well. I'm not sure if I've got a slide for that, but that kind of ties into this. So virtual scouting is what a director will want to do in a virtual set that you've made in Unreal Engine before shoot day. Okay, so he can take your a VR headset, he can go into the world that's been created, drag cameras around, look at the views of them, try different lenses, put lights in different places and stuff, and it's a way of him blocking out shots. In real film work, they would have done this on the set itself. They would have walked the set, whether it was a location or a film studio. They would have gone out, they would have walked it. You see them doing all this business with their hands. Well, Unreal Engine gives you loads of tools to be able to do that in VR, and it's a really, really clever way of doing things. And these guys have absolutely nailed it. So let's have a little look at what they're doing.
In this visualization guide, we're setting out to tell somebody exactly how to do this sort of virtual production using Unreal Engine. Visualization and virtual production is where we take performance capture and virtual camera, and we string that together to make a storyboard.
It's where the director, the DP, working with a team and the art department explore their ideas, if that's the shot that they really wanted, or if it's even possible to do the shot that they really wanted.
So the challenge of visualization when it comes to virtual production is that you take a sophisticated game engine like Unreal Engine, you throw in multiple pieces of software, hardware, time code, and then you throw in film directors and try and make them all play nice together.
Visualization is difficult because there's no one way, and it's even more difficult because no one way is ever written down.
And that's when we started to go, okay, we need to start to pull all this stuff together to figure out how to get from A to B. So I think we're lucky enough to be in contact with a bunch of studios who are leading the field in the virtual production. Once we told them what we were trying to do here, absolutely every single one of them was more than happy to talk to us at length about their processes, certain rules that they have, things that work for them, things that haven't worked for them, and their feedback is going to make Unreal Engine better and easier to use.
Having a lot of experience on set throughout the years using Unreal, we've really dug into the engine, including working with Epic on a lot of our tools and how we use them with directors.
Creating a process that's flexible, allowing for adaptability by a director is really, really important and hard to do. Figuring out exactly where things go wrong and how to fix them, even harder.
We went halfway down the path and then realized that we had to way back up and figure out what kind of slate we want to use, what our naming conventions are going to be for our sequences, how we're going to tape record things, how we're going to use subscenes, how we're not going to use subscenes. And what we're setting out to do here is we want to go through and make all these mistakes and tell you exactly what happened and what we should have done, and then go back and redo them. If we've done it right, somebody should be able to start from the beginning and go all the way through to the end of the guide and be able to start their own small visualization studio.
I wish they had done this years ago. It would have saved me so much time and energy and tears.
We're refraining from calling this the best practice guide. This is more of a, if you don't know how to do it, this is a great place to start. And then you figure out kind of what works best for you and your studio. But this is supposed to be a foundational piece. This guy's being written for one person sitting in their room that wants to get into this, or a large studio that wants to build up their own team. We're listing different hardware at different price points, software, and the same thing with body capture solutions, face capture solutions, what buttons to push to democratize this type of virtual production.
One thing I love about this whole process is that it allows for any creator to get started.
Being able to look at a single source of information and be like, yes, finally, a place for people to approach Unreal Engine with confidence, knowing that throughout the whole process, they have a place to refer to.
As soon as you get your ideas into Unreal Engine, it can be a film, it could be a game, it could go onto ICVFX Wall, it could go into Fortnite, it could go in a million different ways. So hopefully this is motivating people to get in the engine and explore all of these different creative opportunities.
Okay, so that shows you a little bit about what Unreal Engine can do on its own without all of the LED walls and things like that. You noticed in the video he had his iPhone pointing at his face and a live camera tracker on there. You can all download that for free and use it with Unreal Engine and do facial animations with metahumans. Anybody know what metahumans are?
Yeah.
They're the humans that you create within Unreal Engine. Very, very lifelike. And with the app, you can get some really, really good facial animations from them. Also, as well, he was using, I think, which was either the XNs or a Coco suit that he was using. But also, there were some pucks that he was putting around his wrists. Those are a Sony motion capture thing, and they're a very cheap and cheerful solution for it as well. missed that one, the virtual scouting, because they kind of covered that in there. So, Unreal Engine. This is the bit where we all need Unreal Engine on our machines. So, if you've got Unreal Engine on your machine, start it up. If you haven't got a machine or Unreal Engine, sit with somebody that has.